I'm Dr. Lori. I'm at the Cobb Antique Mall in Marietta, Georgia, outside of Atlanta. Come thrift with me. I want to start with the Murano glass lamp. Beautiful example. Look at the color, blown glass from Murano near Venice. How do you tell if you really have a Murano piece if you see a lamp like this? First of all, look at the controlled bubbles inside. Look at the flecks inside. Sometimes the flecks are silver, sometimes the flecks are gold. You'll notice the bulbous base at the bottom, right? So that's the blown glass production. And one of the telltale signs of a 60s lamp is this base. This metal base that has feet that actually is supporting, again, the piece, whether it is glass, whether it's ceramic. But in the 1960s, they give you this nice piece of brass at the bottom as the base. And that base has a cap right here at the top. So you have the metal at the top and the metal at the bottom, so the glass actually is the star of the show. I think the shade is too big. So the shade is characteristic of the time period, yes, but it's a little bit too low. You don't get to see as much of the glass and the shape of the glass from Murano as you can. Murano, of course, is the very famous glass blowing center, and they made everything, sculptures and pictures and beads for necklaces and decanters and compotes and ashtrays and lamps. It also has an original finial. That's also a very important aspect of any lamp. If you have the original finial, how do you know it's an original finial? The material and the form should match the base. Sometimes you still have the adhesive labels on them, and sometimes you have to learn the characteristics, which is what I'm teaching you. Teaching you what to look for. These are pieces that may not come up readily when you're searching on your phone or when you're using one of those internet visual, those visual identifier kind of apps. So be careful what you're doing. I want you to know what's real, because there are fakes out there. There are a lot of Murano glass lamp fakes. What characterizes that this piece is worth $450? Let me tell you something, that's low. That is low priced for this lamp. If you watch my Real Bargains videos, you can search for those videos on my channel. Another one of these lamps sold actually at $800. This is at half price. This piece is an $800 lamp. It's just beautiful. Other Murano pieces that are here, ashtrays. Remember a couple of things about Murano blown glass. First of all, it's a mid-century modern mainstay. So this is a nice ashtray. They usually relate to things that look like they're from the sea because, of course, Venice is a seafaring area with all of the canals and the 117 islands that make up Venice proper. So look at this. It looks sort of like a starfish. Look at the green color and look also at the swirl of the gold. Now, the swirl of the gold you can best see from this side. So you're looking at it now and you're saying, wait, that looks like it's silver. But in fact, that's the bubbles underneath the gold. That's very common. Murano will also make a nice smooth pontil. They'll smooth down the pontil on most of these ashtrays. The patterning of the gold flecks, very characteristic of Murano. $45.95. Bullicante basically indicates the bubbles and also the shape and the form. It's a line or a style for these pieces. That's a nice Italian piece, definitely Murano. It's worth about $45. This piece next to it is also a Murano piece, and this one is called Seguso, and Seguso is a blue, see the blue here? Blue and gold and brown swirl, very typical of the colors that you're going to see in the sea. So C, not S-E-E, C, S-E-A. They want about $80 for this piece, and that's retail value for this piece on the market. They don't come along all the time. It's not like you can get one in perfect condition just by, looking around. To find them in a thrift store is relatively difficult, but this is a nice piece of Murano. This table is largely Italian glass. And the thing about Italian glass is that the Italians remember their history. What does that mean? Their modern forms look back to their ancient forms. So if you look at some of these pieces, these are the forms that the early Romans would have created in glass. Now, these are Murano pieces and they're made in the 1960s. But these particular pieces are mid-century modern, but the form is definitely what we would see, again, looking back to the ancient world. Another one that is that form is this green piece over here. And that large standing pitcher, sometimes called an ewer, that large standing pitcher is also a form or a shape that comes from the ancient Romans. So think of what, Julius Caesar is drinking out of. He's probably drinking out of a form that looks like that. So pouring it into a glass. This color is a little bit later. It's like the late 1960s. It's an olive green color. It's a twisted optic piece. What's a twisted optic? Well, if you see the twist on the front of this piece, when it catches the light, it kind of radiates a little bit. It is not iridescent. Don't be confused. It's not iridescent. It's blown glass. It has multiple forms. And look at the fused glass form on the handle. And look at how low the spout comes down. The spout comes down very low on this side. So you can see that too. That means that whatever is going to be put in that, probably wine, is going to rush out of there. It's going to come out really fast. So you can have a bigger glass of wine, I guess. Now that piece they want $115.95 for. That's an Empoli mid-century modern pitcher. That's a beautiful ewer, and I would say value on that is probably $150. And these three, two are ewers and one is a vase. They all have a bulbous body, which is very typical of Roman glass. So the form, the shape, the placement of the stem, the placement of the handle, and the bulbous bases or the bulbous bodies are all typical of what you would see if you were looking at a piece of Roman glass from the 1st century AD. So the Italians in the 1960s look back to their history and don't forget their history, and they use new styles of glass making, opaline glass and of course twisted optic glass. They use these kinds of new types of glass, but they use an old form or an old shape. Notice how it is all serpentine, curved on the top of the rim, and then it has a very sharp and low falling spout. Now many of you might be looking at the green one and thinking, oh, this is uranium glass. This is not uranium glass. Even though it may look like uranium glass, I would not pass by uranium glass. Now that look and that color tends to talk to everybody says, oh, that's the color I'm supposed to be looking for uranium glass. That's fine, but in this case, the real beauty of this is the opaline glass from Murano. $129 for this one, $99 for this one, and $119 for the blue one. Now, I have to say, I agree that the green one is the best of the group. At $129, that's about retail price, call it $130. And then at $119 for the one in the back, that one's worth about $130 as well. So here's a little bit of a bargain comparatively. And then this piece is $99 because it doesn't have as much workmanship. What do you mean not as much workmanship? You don't have to actually create this blown glass handle on this one because that's not what this is. This is, again, a blue opaline glass vase, not an ewer. If it were me, I'd make them an offer in all three if I were going to negotiate these. Remember, I leave all this stuff here for you, but if I'm going to negotiate on all three of these, I'd say I want all three of them. You got to give me a better price on all three. But if you look at this piece, this really looks like a sea urchin coming up to the surface. That's a ribbed optic twist bowl in olive green. Now that piece they want $115.95. I think that piece is probably worth about $125. That's a Rossini Empoli piece from the 1960s, and that piece is blue glass, a nice decanter. It's very tall, but there would be multiples. So you'd have one that's blue and one that's purple and one that's like a golden yellow color, and typically you had 2 or 3 of them. I had an Aunt Helen who was very, very fashionable comparatively, and she had those on her dining room, and we all thought, oh, look at those pieces of Italian glass, as if, someone in my family went to Italy and got them. But those pieces are real. That piece is really characteristic of the time period. Now, what do they want for that? They want $89.95, that's $100 for one. This piece is very characteristic. I'm not as impressed with this piece for the color than some of the others. And the reason for that is a mid-century modern Italian piece of glass, but only for its size would I say it's worth $85. I don't think it's worth the $95.95 that the seller wants for that. Because, yes, it has a bulbous body, but the shape is a form that's just oversized. That's all it's doing. It's just bigger than most. So that's called a bouquet vase. The other piece I really love is this little guy. This little mid-century modern 4-inch bowl, and this one has beautiful flecks, as beautiful as it is from the front. And I don't like to see where they put that. I know they have to put the label someplace, but where they put the label, because the form is really quite beautiful. But here's the beauty of this. Look at that. That's just gorgeous, because that will show you how it was actually blown. You can actually see how each individual striation of gold has a little bubble inside of it, almost like a leaf. And that little bubble is where that rod was held as they blew this particular hand-blown glass Murano ashtray. And it's very cheap. That piece is easily a $75 piece. And that's the thing about some of these smaller Murano pieces. Sometimes the best workmanship is done in a small package. It's done with a small piece of Murano. Now granted, if I'm choosing, yes, I want the lamp. What great bargains we found. More to come.